Hi everyone. So, um, I'm still eating ramen from the restaurant. However, I still don't think I am addicted to it. Actually, I know I'm not. I think it's like in the category of same foods. Um, just a rotation of things that I eat that I know I'll like. I guess that's like the category I'm putting it in now because I've had ramen like at least once a week. No, I skipped a week or two, but yeah, I wouldn't say I'm addicted. I just need to say this out loud. It's just going to be a rotation, I guess. But I'm not going to be spending $1,000 on it in like a month or two like I did before. Also, when I used to be on my Nips spree, you know that candy Nips? I used to just constantly order it through Amazon, and I was like, oh wait, wouldn't they have Spree on Amazon? And so I went on there, and sure as shit, I could get 4 boxes that are coming to my house tomorrow. So I don't have to go searching for Spree in stores. And poor Alicia, she was so nice when she got off of work yesterday. She came home and then she went to get my car to go put air in the tire. And she said after she did that, she went to 4 different stores to look for Spree for me, and they didn't have any. And I felt bad. And that's when I told her, oh yeah, I ordered some from Amazon. But, only she would go to like 4 stores to look for a box of fucking candy, like for her 40-year-old wife. So I really appreciated that. And I think that's the update that I have. That's all the updates I have right now. So I was watching the newest episode of The Amazing Race last night, and they were in the airport, and it reminded me of my airport escapades. And so I thought I would get on here and share about how traveling used to be like for me, because I haven't been on a plane in since 2007, because that's when I got out of the military. So that was the last time I was on a plane. But before then, from the age of 18 until 5 years, 5 years, I did a whole bunch of traveling. I was on a bunch of planes, and I did not know that I'm autistic. So as I look back on how I used to be when I was traveling, I was totally autistic, and I just didn't know it because, I remember like, because I was like in my early 20s for most of my traveling, and I remember thinking like, why am I this scared to travel? Other people seem to be doing it relatively easily, so why do I have issues? So I think I'm just going to call this episode Autism and Airports. It's really just about traveling in general, but Autism and Airports sounds better to me. So I'll talk about what it used to be like. And if, I don't know if I said this already, but if any of you out there currently travel, or like you have to do it on your own and it gives you a lot of anxiety, hopefully this is relatable, even though like I haven't had to deal with it in so many years. So anyways, growing up, we primarily lived in Japan. I was born and raised there, and the only time we left to go live somewhere else was when we went to Hawaii for 3 years, and I did not like Hawaii. And then we went back to Japan. So I had been on planes plenty of times as a kid, and my parents were from New York. So I remember as a kid, every few years we would fly all the way from Japan to New York for like a week or two to visit my grandparents. And that was like 14, was it 14 or 15? It was like 14 hours total flying, usually with a layover, because I'm pretty sure you can't go 14 hours on a straight flight, but I could be wrong. But I remembered like the traveling just took forever. It was a total of like 24 hours of travel between the time you left Japan and got to New York. So that was always rough. And the plane rides with my parents, and that was back when they used to smoke on airplanes. That was so disgusting. I used to be a smoker, but I can't even imagine, like, oh my God, if people were still smoking on planes these days. It was disgusting. Like, I bet a bunch of people who didn't smoke back in the day developed fucking cancer from everybody else who did. Like, there was nowhere in the plane you could hide from the smoke. Even if you went to a different section, you could still smell it. That was the worst. I hated that, and my parents were smokers. And there wasn't, like, tons of concern about secondhand smoke for kids back then. So, you know, not surprised that I picked it up from my parents, but I'm glad that I quit. But anyways, I did not like traveling with them. And so when I went into the military and got settled and stuff, I would typically go visit them about once a year. And so that was like at least a couple of $1,000s every year for traveling. Because that included the plane ticket. Round trip was usually about $1,500, and then the other $500 was like for bus rides and emergencies and whatever else I needed along the way. So it was pretty pricey, but I was in the military, and $2,000, I feel bad for saying this, but like $2,000 at the time wasn't that much money to me, just because I didn't really have any bills. I already had tons of money. I was just very irresponsible with it. But anyways, so $2,000 to me now is a lot, because I respect money better or more. Well, maybe not. I mean, those of you out there might disagree with me, remembering that I spent all that money on ramen and, well, let's not go back to that. But anyways, what was I saying? Oh, yes. So I'm just going to go from like the beginning of what I would do at these trips to the end when I got back to England. So usually once the new year hit and everybody got their 28 days or 30 days of like paid vacation every year, which they call leave in the military, paid leave. Once that re-upped, I would schedule out when I would go see my parents in Japan. And you know what? Like, it was kind of like expected that I would come see them every year. I don't know why. Like, I felt like I had to. So that's why I went every year, when clearly I could have just used all of my vacation for like other shit that I wanted to do. So usually like 2 or 3 weeks would go to seeing them. And then I would have 1 or 2 weeks left over for the rest of the year to go visit like other places throughout Europe and stuff. But the majority of like my leave time every year went to go seeing them. And I'm not blaming them, because I did make the choice, but that's just how it was. So we had the internet back in, when did I join? 2002, 2003, 4. Yeah, there was the internet. It wasn't as easy to like navigate as it is now. So that in itself was hard, but I would have to get on. I would go to like Expedia or something like that, and then I would just start looking for flights. And the goal was to find a nonstop flight, because layovers are scary, and I remember thinking like that's a whole new level of stress they created for me, because it's just, you have to, like, you get on a plane and it's just so easy to go, because it's like 11 hours nonstop from England to Japan. And there was one time I had to have a layover. There was no way around it. I don't remember why, but there were no nonstop flights from England to Japan, and I had to do a layover both ways in Charles de Gaulle Airport. But so when I would go from like the 11 hours, sorry for the talking. Sorry. I don't think that, like, I try to get better with it. But when I would when I would fly from England to Japan nonstop, and I would secure that flight, the next thing I would do is I would look to see, are there any aisle seats or seats by the emergency doors? Because the last thing I wanted to do was be trapped by a window, like have a stranger on the other side of me, like trapping me in by the window. And that's how I just viewed it. I didn't want to be trapped in next to a stranger And by trapped, I mean, like, I like to drink a lot of beverages, so I constantly have to go to the bathroom. And, oh, if you hear that noise, somebody's mowing. They've got their rider out. Sorry about that. But I didn't want to have to get up and walk over a stranger multiple times to go to the bathroom because I didn't want to irritate them. However, I did not mind it when I was the one on the aisle seat and I had a stranger next to the window seat and they had to get up and go to the bathroom or do whatever. I didn't care. I just got right up. I didn't feel bothered. I just felt relieved that it wasn't me having to do the bothering. Like, I don't know. It was just a weird way of thinking, but I refused to sit by a window. Not to mention, I really didn't need to see, oh, look at Japan from the window, because I'd already seen that view so many times before. And I just didn't want to be trapped. And the thing about the emergency exits is, for any of you who travel, you know that is where you get the most leg room. I remember, like, I would talk to people I worked with at the command post, and they would be like, I can't believe you're willing to get a seat by the emergency exit. Aren't you afraid that, like, what if the door opens and you get sucked out? You're right there. Well, I'm not the only one that's going to go. Somebody else will too. Like, it's not going to just suck out whoever's sitting next to it. And I decided that was worth risking my life to get that extra leg room. Because if I got a seat by the emergency exit, it means I could sit by the window because I could get up and not have to climb over anybody because there was all this room in front of me since there was no passengers in front of us. So the majority of the time I lucked out with emergency exit seats, and I figured I'm okay with the chance that I might die by getting sucked out of this plane just so I can get some extra leg room. And not to mention, like, I was very well aware it's scary being up in the air in, like, this huge metal flying contraption, but I never felt scared that, like, the plane was going to crash. I remember thinking, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, and life is hard, so if this is my time to go, so be it. And sad to say, I have not given up that way of thinking. Like, I don't know. Life is hard, so I'm not, like, sitting here, what can I do to keep myself alive until I'm, like, 90? Like, no, I don't even know if I want to live till I'm 90. But yeah, so that never scared me. But the layovers were terrifying because, oh my God, it was not the way there, but I remember it was the way back when I was going from Japan back to England, and we had to stop in Charles de Gaulle, and I had like less than 20 minutes, 30 minutes to make it to the connecting flight, and it was it was like at the opposite end of wherever. I just remember I had to fucking run, and I didn't even know where I was going. So it's like running and like trying to like understand the signs, like, because a lot of them were in French, and then like stopping and asking people, how do I get to this part of the airport or whatever. Like, that was just kind of a blur, but I did make it. But layovers suck because that's just a whole other level of anxiety. It's bad enough I have to go from one airport to another, but if you throw a third airport in there in the middle, oh my God, that's so overwhelming because airports are so overwhelming. They're huge. They're loud. There's people talking over the speakers to go here, go there. There's like TV screens everywhere showing flights of all kinds, whether they're delayed or canceled. There's people just sitting around, laying, sleeping on chairs, eating all kinds of food. It is a sensory nightmare. Airports were a sensory nightmare. Oh my God. And the only airport I ever liked was Narita. I didn't like Narita Airport in Japan. Oh, that was my favorite. It felt like I was home. Once I got to Narita, like coming from Japan, I was like, there's my people. I'm home. And Japanese people are so nice. I feel like, because I was raised in Japan, I feel like I am one of them, even though I know I'm not. But Japanese airports, oh my God, they're so much better. They're calmer. They're quieter. Things make more sense. They're more organized. Employees are way more willing to help you when you have questions and don't like act annoyed because they hate their lives or their jobs or whatever. I loved Narita Airport. The food, because I was raised on ramen and sushi, and I just was like, please, just I need to get to Narita because then I'll be fine. And in England, the two airports I got to choose from were Heathrow and Gatwick. I did Gatwick one time, and I remember thinking that was such a difficult airport to navigate that I never wanted to go back there again. So I just used Heathrow from there on out, and Heathrow isn't too bad. But yeah, so when I would be on a plane, let's say I'm on the nonstop flight from England to Japan, and we're about like an hour or two out, they would hand out these cards to every passenger. I forgot what they were for. I think it was for like, are you a resident of Japan or not? If you're not, like, where are you going? Like, who are you staying with? I don't know if that's like a customs thing or what that was, but I remember getting those cards and I never knew exactly like what to do with them or what they were for. I would always look at the person next to me, like, what are they writing? And I would usually be like, I'd have to ask like a flight attendant, like, what am I supposed to be doing with this? And I remember feeling so stupid because they just explained what they were for and I wasn't able to comprehend. So that was embarrassing. And then, like half hour before landing, I'm already staring at like, I had printed out bus schedules before leaving England. So I was trying to figure out, okay, what bus can I take to get from the airport to where my family was? And sometimes, oh my God, that was just a nightmare, those fucking buses. Because, like, this is embarrassing, but I spent so many years in Japan, I can barely read hiragana, which is one of the writing styles. I could barely read that. And I took Japanese classes in school, and I struggled because I don't understand, like, writing characters to represent words. I never could get that. And so the buses, like, you go outside of the airport, and at the time there was like so many buses. There were like 50 fucking buses, and like there were times of like departures and arrivals. Most of it was in Japanese. I was like, where am I supposed to go? How do I know if I get on this bus it's going to take me to where I need to go? It was just a nightmare. While I traveled, there was a lot of staring at whatever paperwork I printed out to memorize, okay, this is when the flight's landing, this is where I go. Or if I'm on the bus ride from, like when I was in the military, a bus would pick you up right outside of the base and then take you to the airport so that they could get the military people too, for those of us who wanted to go on vacation. And so I would get on that bus, and then it was maybe 45 minutes or an hour to the airport. And I would reread, because back then we didn't have cell phones like we do now. We had stupid flip phones or Blackberries. And I just had a flip phone, and I only used it for basic texting. Like, that wasn't even something that people weren't addicted to their phones like they are now, for obvious reasons. So I didn't have a phone with all my information for the airports and the traveling on it. I had to print out a whole bunch of paperwork to bring with me. And so I'd be on that bus and I would reread the paperwork. Okay, the flight leaves at this time. This is where I need to go when I get there. Okay, we're getting at the airport in about half an hour. And when we get there, this is where I need to go. And I would just keep rereading it. Looking back, I know that was because, like, when I'm anxious, I can't. It's hard for me to remember things, let alone keep travel information in my head all straight. So I would just keep reading. And I never really thought that was odd. It was just something that I was used to doing. And as soon as the bus pulled up at the airport, I would get out and I would read where I'm supposed to go again on my paperwork that I printed out, and then I would like go there, hopefully without any issues. And it was terrifying traveling by myself. I always only traveled by myself. And well, no, I mean, going from England to Japan, it was always by myself. But when I would travel around Europe, I went with friends and we stayed places and that was fun. But, like you don't really have that kind of anxiety when you're traveling with other people because, it's not really up to me. Like they know where they're going. I'll just follow them, like that kind of thing. But anyways, so where am I at? Okay, so I spent hours trying to find the right flight, trying to make sure that it was a nonstop flight, if at all possible, so that it can like reduce the confusion for me. And even if I had to spend a few $1,000s, like maybe more than I wanted to spend just to get a nonstop flight, I did that. It was worth not having to add that extra stress in. And then, and then on the way back, it was just as stressful every single time. Even though like the third or fourth time I made this trip, I was still extremely anxious every single time. And like my parents didn't understand when I would tell them like, oh, like I got lost, and like my mom would like laugh or whatever because, they did a bunch of traveling because they were both in the military. My dad retired. My mom got out after she got pregnant with me, but like they've been on planes before. I don't know. I just felt that it was kind of like, why are you giving your kids such a hard time for being stressed about traveling by themselves? Not to mention, I was only in my early 20s. Like to me now, like a 21-year-old, no offense if there's anybody listening that's in their 20s. But if there is, I mean, like, a 21-year-old now to me is just like a kid. It's a little kid. Like, I was just a baby, and I didn't know, like, I thought that I was this adult that needed to know, like, all these things, and, this should be easy for me. But it wasn't, and it didn't have to be. But, yeah, I don't know. I just, looking back, I never really wanted to visit my family. Because at the time, my brother was in the military. He was stationed elsewhere. He was in the States, stationed there. So, like, it was just me going back to see my mom and my dad. And it was like this thing that was expected because they knew that I made decent money. And they knew that I didn't have, like, a family or anything. And they knew that I got a month of leave every year to use. And when I say they, I always mean my mom, because my dad was just there. He just went along with whatever she said or did or wanted. And I never was like, oh, I can't wait to see them. You know what I was like? I was like, oh, I cannot wait to get to Japan to eat a bunch of ramen and sushi. That's what I was looking forward to. I wasn't really like, oh, I can't wait to see them, because I wasn't that excited about it. I was more excited about Japan because it's my home. I missed it. I wanted to be in Japan because it is like, it's just the nicest place on earth to me. And the States, living in America, it's rough here. Living in England, it was rough. But, like, living in Japan, it just seemed like there was less hate. There was more unity. They were more about the collective rather than the individual. They looked out for people. I just felt like Japan, Japanese people always have had my back. I've made such good Japanese friends. I still keep in touch with one of them. I just felt like that was my home. That's where I feel the most safe. Even though I couldn't read most of the shit at the airport or whatever, I knew that I'd be okay. I don't know how else to explain it. But yeah, looking back, all this time I thought that I had looked forward to seeing them because I missed them so much or something like that. But it never had to do with like looking forward to seeing them. I just wanted to get back to the food. I guess I'm very like food motivated. I don't know. But you just can't find the kind of food in England that you can get in Japan. And So yeah, I guess I pretty much spent a couple $1,000s a year to go back to Japan for 2 weeks to eat food and to live with my parents. And then when I got out of the military, because they pay for your flight, they'll pay for like one destination. They won't pay for any layovers or whatever. So I got to pick where I wanted to go after I separated from the military, and I picked Alabama because that's where my brother and his wife were at the time, and I hadn't seen my brother in years. So I was like, oh, I'll just stay with them for like a week, and then, I'll get my own flight to New York after that. And I want to say, like, I don't know, I cannot remember anything about what airport I went to, the plane. I don't remember any of the traveling at all between like getting out of the military and getting to Alabama. So I hope I'm not repressing some shit. But I just don't remember anything about that. So I don't know if that's a good thing or not. And then the last stop to the States was flying from Alabama to New York. And I do remember, like, when, was it JFK I landed in? And my parents were waiting for me, and I did feel relief because I knew that, like, all I had to do was make it to the airport, and they were there, and they could take me to wherever I needed to go. Like, I'm very very dependent on Alicia for chauffeuring me places. Like, she just knows that when we get in the car, if it's not my car and I'm not driving her to ketamine therapy, she's always driving. She will drive all the time, and she likes to do it, and I like to not do it. But I'm so dependent on her. Like, if I want to go to a store and I don't drive there on my own, and I don't want to because it seems too scary, I'll wait till she gets home from work, and I'll be like, can you take me, please? And she will. So, like, I'm interested to see how we would be traveling, because we've not been on an airplane together. So that would be something new for both of us. And I don't know, like, how I would do after all these years. Maybe being older, it just would be easier for me. I don't know. But I don't know how helpful this episode was. I feel like I was kind of all over the place. But, I guess the moral of the story is there's no moral of this story. There's no moral. I just was so scared all the time. And you know what's weird is, looking back, it's like that was my norm. Constantly being anxious and fearful, like that was my normal. So it was like I almost didn't even realize that that's how I was feeling on a regular basis. Like I said, rereading the directions on where I need to go once I get to like the airport over and over and over and over again didn't dawn on me that was weird. It was just something I had to do. I don't know. It was just not fun. I wish I did not go back to Japan. Well, no, I am glad I went to Japan every year. I just wasn't really glad to see my parents. So now I know why that is. I didn't at the time because, I was still under my mom's brainwashing. And while I'm at it, I'll just say, when I would go see my parents, it was so fucking boring, because that's why I think my mom's autistic, because she didn't like going anywhere. She didn't like going anywhere if she didn't have to go. And when I went to Japan to visit them, I was like, can you take me to this restaurant? I would like to go to this store. Like, hello. It was just like a couple of days of places I wanted to go visit. And then the rest of the week or two that I had left with them, I would, just hang out. But it was so boring because they would just stay at home all the time. And maybe I should just save that for another episode. I don't know. It was like, well, there's not a whole lot to say about it. It just sucked. It sucked. Because I remember like having to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. And if you listen to the bathroom episode, you know why that bothered me. And so I remember still having like anxiety about that, but not really connecting it to like my childhood or anything. And when I got up in the morning, I couldn't really do anything. Like, my mom was at her computer every fucking morning. back when they had like those ginormous like computer stations with like, I don't know, the monitors and the big old screens. I don't know if people still use that now because everybody has that laptops now, but they didn't. They just had these huge computers. And I'd wake up and my mom would always be on it, and my dad would either be awake or at work, or if he was at home, he was on his computer too. So like, what was I supposed to do? Sit down and watch TV? And like, there was nobody to talk to. I had to ask to get on the computer, to email some friends to let them know I got to England okay. Like, they never had anything planned. We sat around a bunch. Maybe that I was being selfish. I don't know if that sounds like a selfish thing to say. You know, it's not like I expected them to take me everywhere every day I was there, but I thought that we would do more than just sit in the house the whole time. And it's not like my parents had a whole lot to say. They weren't super interested in like me or what was going on in the military with me. But then my mom acted like she missed me so much, which is why I had to go back every year. It's just, I'm still trying to piece this shit together. But I was just watching that episode of The Amazing Race, and they're back to being able to book their own flights because during the pandemic, they weren't able to. They had to go with whatever the show set up for them because the pandemic was just still so rampant. But now they're old school, back to figuring out, how do I get on this flight? What's the earliest flight I can get on? Blah, blah, blah. And they're running around the airports, and I just was like immediately just kind of thrown back into like military land when I would go on vacation every year from England to Japan, and the nightmare that traveling was for me. Yeah. And I did not renew my passport, so I'm stuck in this fucking country until I can get a new passport, which I should do now. I should do soon, because this country called the United States of America doesn't seem very united. But then nowhere else in the world is looking like an ideal place to go to right now. So like, I don't know, but I probably should renew like my passport to make sure I have like an escape, right? Or like get a kayak or something. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. If you're still listening, thank you. I hope you're only listening because like you can relate to some of this or whatever. In my mind, this seemed more organized. I don't know how this episode's going to sound. Okay, goodbye. Sorry, goodbye.